Hi everyone, welcome to the Cheryl Witha show. We are at episode 14, and today I have Tyler Chin with us. And this month is a very exciting month because maybe some of you know I work with young people. So this month is actually featuring two young people, one from Malaysia, all right, and we have another from Africa. And I'm going to bring Tyler Chin out so you can get to know him a little bit better. And I think they are probably the youngest people I've brought on this particular show. And I'm very inspired by what both of them have done. So today we're going to focus on Tyler. So I'm going to bring Tyler up. Hi, Tyler.
Hi, Cheryl.
How are you?
Doing good, doing good. And you?
I am good because you're here, of course. And as I mentioned a little earlier, um, it's exciting for me because I work with young people on a daily basis, right? So having a young person featured on the show is very exciting for me because it shows my students that anything is possible, even if you start very much young, at a very young age. So Tyler, talk to me about your background. Where are you at?
Oh, okay. So maybe I can start with where I am right now, and then I can just backtrack a little bit so there's more to talk about. Yeah, so currently I'm the head of growth with our Stories Lab. So we're a social media marketing agency, and we also do productions. So yeah, we basically focus on like organic social media marketing and to growing accounts organically. So meaning we don't do paid ads lah. Yeah, so small, kind of a small agency. We're currently sitting at about 12 people. That's a lot of fun. But prior to doing this, I was actually in recruitment for about 3 years. Started as an intern, and I think within 2 years, I was leading an agency. But post lockdown, when the lockdown happened in 2020, that changed slightly. So then I moved on to my own practice where I was helping to consult for not only the hiring process, but also building up interview sheets, the success criteria, and also developing case studies for interviews. And yeah, then prior to that, I was actually when I was still studying, actually when I was in Monash, I was actually a ghostwriter for about 5 years before that. So made a full circle back to the creative field.
So are you happy to be back in the creative field?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, if I'm being honest, a bit more fun than HR. HR is all the serious stuff, right? So now I get to the fun stuff.
I definitely like that because I think we probably get to see a little bit of more fun side of you because HR, sometimes you have to like hold back a little, maybe, I don't know, depending on your clients and things like that, right? But I mean, that's your work experience and things like that. And I hear the word like managing, run an agency. So those are like very, very big words in a sense where, people are probably looking at Tyler and saying, hey, Tyler, it's like, I showed my students your poster today and they're like, he's really young. Huh? I was like, yes, he is. He's really young. That's why I'm bringing him on today because I think you've got quite an exciting journey. And I want to kind of find out like who is Tyler actually? You've told us your work experience, but who are you essentially? Like if you were an ingredient to a cake, for example, right? What is your main ingredient? Like what's the core ingredient of Tyler?
Oh yeah, that is interesting. Mm, yeah. So okay, I didn't know that we are gonna start with a deep dive. All right, so let's do this. Um, yeah, I guess when it comes to in terms of essence, right? I think it's mainly curiosity because I'll say that's the main element because whatever that drove my any decisions I made, whether it was personal, whether it was for jokes or pranks in the past even. So for example, like when I was a kid, um, first memory of curiosity I remembered was I was wondering if I were to shoot chewing gum into somebody's hair with a stick. No, I mean I was a kid. I was extremely young. I think maybe five. I was a horrendous kid. So my principal had a fun time dealing with me. Yeah. So I mean that's at least memories of curiosity. But how that translated into like as I was growing up, curious about different fields, different things, different knowledge. So my
So
YouTube
Tyler,
binges
before
get
we
pretty
go there, right,
interesting.
I have to
Oh,
ask you this. I can't help it. So you said you were curious as a kid about chewing gum. So did you act on your curiosity or you just
oh. Unfortunately, I acted on it. Unfortunately for the person on the other end.
so you found out? So you said you are curious about a lot of things. Is that what brought you into the whole the start of ghostwriting? Like how did you find yourself even there? You said you were still studying, right, in Monash?
Oh yeah. So I started writing. Well, I mean, for pocket money, right? Because education's expensive. Family didn't come. Not really from wealth.
Yeah.
So you had to make ends meet somehow, right? And back then, when I was a college student, you basically have no skills. You have no experience. You don't have a degree. Nothing. So no
Mm.
certifications. Nothing. You had to find a way to make something. So I thought, yeah, let's try writing because I know, like a lot of articles, newspapers, magazines, for example, they pay like for bulk writing and stuff like that. So I started with that. It started for a need for money, honestly. Like that's what it was. And after a while, as I started writing different pieces, and to write things that you do not know about, you need to first read, talk to people. And through that process, I started discovering like, hey, that's actually pretty interesting. Then I'll actually read more on my own. And then I'll write another article, just submit them in. So that's how the whole process started.
But how did you get into ghostwriting? Like, how do you know where to look, or how? I mean, like, oh, I can get paid. You probably knew you could get paid, but like, where do you even start? Like, how do you start that ball for someone to actually like even hire you? Because you said you have no skills, right? So were you one of those people that you were just good at writing? You had a flair from the very beginning.
No, I wasn't good. My English teacher gave me a C in Form 5. So yeah, not the best with writing as actually. But I would say it's a stroke of luck because when I just about started writing for about maybe 2 years, I was being paid peanuts, by the way. Like maybe one article I was being paid like 30 bucks, like 30
Mm.
ringgit. So very cheap
They pay
labor.
you like per word, like so half a cent or something like that, right?
Yeah, but to me, it like 30 ringgit
Yeah.
sounds better than exposure. So yeah, I'll take
Correct.
the 30 ringgit.
Better than exposure. I like that because when it comes to creative, I'm sure you can agree with that, right? A lot of people like to say, "Oh, just do this for us for exposure." You're still young, so it's good for you. So I'm glad you said that, right? At least I'm getting some value exchange, right? All right, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it started that way. I was writing in bulk, and there was one time I was working part time in a cafe. It was actually in Taman Tun called Fickles. Um,
Mhm.
but the cafe has since closed down. But I met my mentor that he happened to be visiting Malaysia from the UK, and he was sitting behind towards the back area where there's a mirror behind him. And I noticed he was typing something on his laptop. And since I was like in the middle of just wiping down after a shift, that's maybe around like 4. So like the cafe was just starting to quiet down. I noticed he was writing something on his laptop, and there was something about the Belt Road in China. So how
Mm,
they were acquiring land through exchange partnership, energy
yeah.
deals, stuff like that. So he was writing about that, and I thought, oh, okay, I happen to have like written something about that before. So let me try and complete this work while he goes to the washroom, just to see what he thinks of it. So again, that was just curiosity. Right? I'm like, I don't know if he'll like it or he'll hate me for it. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm just a waiter there, right? So wrote it down, just left it on his table. He's like, wait, who wrote this? So he asked me, like, do you see anyone come by and write on my laptop? I said, oh, that was me. So then he looked at the piece like, okay, did you actually like write on the side? Do you want to do any freelance writing? I said, yeah, I don't mind trying. So he gave me his card. And yeah, that was how I got into ghostwriting because after I wrote that
So
article for him, hmm,
you knew him? You knew him before that, or is this a guy who came and he was on his laptop at that point of time, and you wrote on his laptop, or you mean you wrote on a piece of paper or something like that beside him, or what?
oh, I wrote it on my phone and I just left my phone on the table so you could see it.
Very daring, yeah. In
Yeah, I mean,
Taman
I
Tun.
didn't in Tamantun, yeah. So a bit thick skin lah. But
A bit thick
again, like
skin.
that's the thing. I was more curious than I was ashamed of anything. So just try it out.
Yeah, but that's an amazing, because when you said my mentor, I thought you knew him, right? So he was coming and maybe he's visiting you there. But now that you say that you didn't know him at that point of time, right? And
No.
you just saw him write something like that, and you were like, okay, let's try. And that's an amazing. I think that sense of curiosity is very, very important, because it also urges you to be a little bit more brave to do that. I mean, how many people would dare to one, leave their phone there, to write something, right? Write something to contribute towards what this person has wrote. But I guess that opened up. Probably that was one of the doors that opened up many more doors later on, right? Like a domino kind of
Oh,
effect.
definitely. Every single other client later came through him, and those were projects that paid quite well. So from the 30, like the first article I did through him was 300 ringgit. So like 100% increase. So
Wow,
yeah,
from 30 ringgit.
yeah. So I remember because I was so proud of that paycheck, I just kept it. So yeah. Oh, Akmal's here. Hi, Akmal.
Hi, Akmal. Nice to see you here as well. He was just telling us about how he got a huge percentage of upgrade from 30 ringgit, which is a big deal, right? When you're earning 30 ringgit to 300, that's a lot. That's a huge jump, actually. And it must have done a lot for your confidence as well.
Oh yeah, as a student with 300 ringgit, like, oh yeah, it felt so good.
Like, wow, I nailed it,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like other projects later on, paid more, but that was by far the
Okay.
happiest I was, like the happiest moment still.
So I just want to backtrack a little, right? So
Sure.
earlier you said something about your upbringing, right? The reason that pushed you to even start writing is because of your background, right? You say you do not come from wealth. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing? Because I think it'll give us a better understanding about what is your pull and push kind of factor as well.
Sure. So yeah, in terms of how the money thing came into the picture, right? So my father, honestly, he was doing really well. I was very fortunate earlier part of my life, right, where I was actually going to Sri Kedu before this, like for primary school. So very fortunate. But unfortunately, I think when I was 11, yeah, my father suddenly had well, my mother passed away when I was 9.
So
Yeah, due to breast cancer. So no, it's okay. It's a long time ago.
yeah.
But yeah, so from that, like there was a lot of money spent there by my father, to take care of my mom basically in the last few years. And also, after that, he happened to be retrenched because
Mm,
the company had a merger. He was the CEO back then. So company had a merger. He was out of a job. So then he was struggling to make ends meet and such. So that was the first touch I got, to really understanding what it meant to make a living for a family. Because yeah, my father's a very strong Asian father, so he won't ever complain. He'll never talk about it in front of
yeah.
children. He just retreat to his corner and keep it to himself really. But in front of us, he was always strong and happy and everything else.
Mhm,
So yeah,
mhm.
I got to have a understanding of how important it was to financially be stable, and how fragile life really can be, right, in that sense. Because first my mother, and then
Definitely.
my father's stability, everything was gone in just like a few years, right? So yeah, I learned to be quite frugal, learned to be quite uh, humble as well in that sense growing up. Because yeah, you look around you, you realize that everything that you have could be gone very quickly. So yeah, I treat everything with that respect, and that's why in terms of taking care of people, like yeah, that's something that stuck with me ever since.
I think that's a very important lesson to learn because uh, sometimes we always assume where we are at now is where we're always going to be. Sometimes for positive or sometimes for negative, right? Like things are so bad, it's going to be bad forever. Or sometimes things are so good, you just assume that's how it's always going to be. So when change happens, it's really tough, right? And did your dad know that because you said your dad has this whole persona, right? Like, the tough guy sort of thing, right? Did he know that you were like trying to help out and earn on the side? Like how what did he think about all that?
Okay. So my father had absolutely no idea for the full 5 years that I was writing. He had no idea I was writing on the side. Um, yeah, and until today, like if I were explain to him what ghostwriting was, he doesn't really bother too much. He's like, okay, as long as you're not, you know, um, doing anything bad or illegal, you're all right. Oops, connection. Sorry, I think the Wi-Fi dropped a little bit.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I did
Uh,
for a while.
oh, sorry. Where did I stop?
You said your father didn't really know. He said as long as it's not anything illegal, right?
Yeah, so as long as it's not anything illegal, you're fine. As long as it's not cheating people, I'm good. Yeah. So he didn't ask too many questions, and being a typical father, like he only asked like, "Oh, what
Yeah,
you do? You
yeah.
write? Okay, my son's a writer, so that's why he's telling other people after that."
Okay, we have to talk about your writing, right? So one thing I realize is like, especially people who are coming from, because if you look at your profile, you have a very, I would say, you have a really very strong brand. Okay, your branding is on point, and
Thank you.
you portray uh, like when a person looks at you, it's like I believe that you're a career coach. You know what I mean? Like you portray whatever that you say you are. Your branding is really on point on many levels from the way you write and things like that. But most people when they start off, especially right, especially younger, they tend to write. You have all these feel good stories.
Yeah.
The good things, what you've done. my. What is with the Wi Fi today?
I think a lot of people must be watching Netflix after work.
Possibly, highly possible. Hi, Deepak. Deepak says hi. Deepak
Oh, hi
Bajpa is
Deepak.
joining us, and Lawrence is here as well. Lawrence said hi earlier. I'm so sorry about the Wi Fi. I don't know what's going on. Maybe, like you said, right? Some famous Netflix series is going on, and but yeah, when you're very candid with how you write and you're very honest and you are willing to say, I think one of the posts that you wrote, and you said, right, I made a mistake and I didn't realize that I was treating someone in this particular way,
Oh,
right, until I think the person you worked with came and said, can let's have a chat like after work.
oh, yeah. That
Maybe
was
you
the
can
first
tell us a
person I
little
ever
bit
hired.
about that, right? Must have been, especially when someone comes and confronts you. I mean, for that person who actually did that, right? I really salute you to do that, because a lot of us will find it very hard to do that confronting, especially to someone we are reporting to, right? Even someone at my age and my experience, sometimes to confront your boss or superior and say, you are treating me like this, it's very hard. So
Oh, is it my Wi-Fi? Oh gosh.
can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. Okay,
Ah,
go ahead. Hi, Laura.
oh, hi Laura.
Laura has joined us as well. We were just
I haven't
talking about
seen.
you earlier backstage.
All good things. All good things. I assure you. Uh, but yeah.
Like,
So
what
I
was it
think.
like when someone
Oh,
approached you?
okay. So some context to that, right? That guy was literally the first person that my manager ever got me to like interview and hire, and this was back before I was. Wait, no. Yeah, I was literally like I think second year university student. Never been in a professional workplace, right? Because even then I was still working remotely for this mentor. Yeah, so this guy, I mean, it's the general rule of like the industry for anything is very high pressure. Like people tend to be quite tough on each other. My mentor, he was, I mean, as brilliant as he was quite militant in the way he ran the team. So like it's my way or the
Yeah,
highway. You get things done on point, make sure
yeah,
everything is
yeah.
timely. Otherwise, you're gonna get it. So pretty harsh, and therefore a lot of harsh words were exchanged to and fro, and that's a normal everyday thing for us. So having been on the receiving end of that, I tried to be a bit
Mhm.
milder, but even the toned down version of my mentor, which I
Yeah, yeah.
was still fairly nasty when things went wrong. So I was very harsh on that guy, like
Hmm,
seriously
hmm.
harsh. Um, yeah, and I remember like there was one incident. The incident that actually triggered him to bring me aside and talk. Right, was when I literally yeah, I'm not proud of this in hindsight, but
Yeah.
yeah, at the time I was quite angry because he was supposed to deliver something on behalf of the team because he's based in Brazil. This guy,
Mm,
so working in different time zones, and when no one's awake to handle it for you, you kind of have to be independent, right? Because that's what each of our
right.
roles were within the team. So you have 24/7 coverage. He messed up, so it wasn't until 6 hours later before the next person picked it up, and
Mm,
by then the damage was already done for the client, and we basically lost that whole account. So I've never lost an account to date for that side of things. So I was really
yeah.
really angry with him on that. So I took him to task during the next team meeting, and yeah, it was not good at all in hindsight. So again, mistake was made. So he took me aside. It's like, yeah, he said, Tyler, I understand why you're angry, but would it hurt to be a bit more civil about the way you talk to me in front of the team? He said, like, I get it. You can do it to me behind closed doors. That's perfectly fine. Just not in front of them. So to me again, I was like, yeah, actually, now that I'm talking to him as a person outside of work, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, being young, and I think because I was younger in the field and people were a bit doubtful of my skill level and all that, I used to have to hide my age. So what my mentor used to do with me in meetings, he'll make me talk as if I'm a bit older, and he'll turn off my video. He's like, "Oh, Tyler is actually experiencing some technical difficulties, but he's been with us for about 10 years already, so don't have to worry." So yeah, then he made me sound older,
Yeah,
and yeah, so I was hidden. So there was a lot of pressure on me because within the team I was also the
yeah,
youngest,
yeah.
so I needed to carry my weight, and when things go wrong, I feel like it's ammunition for them to take away my position of sorts. So I was very insecure about it at the time. Yeah, so I think it was misdirected anger towards him instead. So yeah, that was a lesson learned from that.
I think I can totally relate to that because I mean I joined my field when I was very young in my 20s. So exactly what you felt, right? Like you have to portray an older person. So for me I had to like dress older. I mean which woman wants to dress older, right? Me. I used to buy clothes that make me look older. But you carry yourself very well. I think unless I go through your profile and see what year you graduated, I probably would have no idea where to place you age-wise. Not because you look old, but your whole makeup and how you not makeup lah, the whole makeup and how you brand yourself. Wouldn't have any clue. But going back to that, right? I mean,
Hmm.
experiencing is one thing. Like maybe we're having a chit chat now and you're sharing it, but now you've taken it and you've put it online on a platform like this. Like what prompted you to be so candid and share? I mean, you see people who are much older doing that, maybe like after many years, you get what I mean, like down the road sort of thing. Like what prompted you to share? Because I think it's really good that you share because people get an insight that yeah, I might be doing that too.
Right. Yeah, honestly, like the way I've been sharing, yeah, I have this journaling habit, right? So that started back when ever since I started writing. So that was how I used to process the thoughts. So when you see it laid out in front of you on paper, it becomes much clearer and you have much more time to sit with your thoughts in that sense. So I used to do that a lot. And upon reflecting, sometimes when I talk to friends outside of work, at the mamak and all that, for example. So we're sitting down talking about stuff, and then they realize like, yeah, bring up a topic like, yeah, this actually sounds very helpful. I didn't know I needed to hear this and stuff like that. So they said like, why don't you just whatever you're thinking, think somebody out there will appreciate it. Why don't you just share it online? So that's how the habit started. You see. So it's always been, yeah, that's why I'll filter through. So I'll make sure that, whatever I put out there is, again, a bit more responsible because, you have to make sure that what we put out is not going to make anyone feel or think a
Yeah,
certain way,
yeah,
like I think there's a certain responsibility that should be had there.
definitely.
So yeah, I think that's how it started. It was really not on purpose to be how to put it, to be vulnerable, but it's more like, if this helps somebody and they're thinking something similar, yeah, it's good if it helps one person. I don't really care who reads, but if it helps one person, yeah, that's good. So that's how that habit started.
I think because I mean, the way it's written, right, it's very well framed, but it doesn't seem, it's not like scripted. You get what I mean? It's not scripted. At the same time, it's not like, Facebook rant kind of thing. You this happen, blah, blah, blah sort of thing. So it's like a very nice balance in terms of how you portrayed it. And I think that's what I noticed with your writing is very reflective. Like, and probably that's from your journaling. But how did this journaling was something you've always done?
Yeah, I mean, it was a habit since I was a kid, because when a lot of things were happening, I needed to process those things. I don't understand it yet, right? So what I used to do was, yeah, just to journal and just write it, when I'm really heavily emotional, for example. So that's one version. When I calm down a little bit the next day when I wake up, and I'm okay, let's write another version for what I can recount and what I can understand. Then when I'm in a better mood, I'll write another version. I'll see three versions side by side, and I figure out like, okay, this is where the bias was happening. This was because of emotion. And then, if one thing is consistent across all three, then I know it's kind of factual, right? Or it's what actually happened, maybe. Yeah, so that's how that habit whole started. And I mean, it's helped me a lot in terms of digesting things. So everything that I write is basically either the second or the third version, really.
You see, guys, now you know why he's on my show, right? Very inspiring, right? I mean, your thought process is actually very interesting. The fact that you had that knowledge to do that, to know what to do with those emotions, right? Most of us like, okay, take the emotion and do what with it. Like, okay, let's write it down, and then you're looking at three different versions and you're looking at the progress, okay, now from here to here to here, and then you're analyzing it further. So I think that is actually very interesting, and I hope for the young people who are listening, right, you're really paying attention to what Tyler is saying, because he's not just saying like, oh, I had this emotions and that's it, but like what did you do with it and how did it help him grow further. I think that's a very important point there. And let's talk about mentorship, right? So from the very beginning, when you started talking and you said the first opportunity you had was through this mentor, right? I mean, the stranger who I guess became a mentor, right? Did you have that idea of having a mentor at that point of time? And how did that mentorship journey kind of happen? Is it because of the job, the writing job, that evolved into a mentorship, or how does that?
Yeah, so essentially that relationship, how it started with my then mentor, right? I mean, can't mention his name because it's under NDA,
No problem.
But yeah, basically how it was with him, it started as as part of his freelancing pool. So he used to have like a whole, like 200 lists of freelancers, and depending on how what sort of thought process we have, what's our style, what topics we write about, he'll just throw projects as and when, and whoever wants to pick it up can pick it up. So it started out that way, and after a while, I think, yeah, I don't know which part of me that really like resonated with him, but there's just one time I think after like the third project I written for him, he said like, you seem to like complex things, and I don't see that very often, so do you want to like maybe just catch up and talk a little bit about maybe a different style of writing, because before there's still article writing for organizations, but I said, do you want to write for people instead, right? Maybe become their Twitter presence, become their write their speakers, write their jokes, for example. Do you want to try a different type of writing? So I said, yeah, okay. And I think over time, maybe he saw a part of me in him, I'm not too sure. um,
Yeah.
Today, I'll still probably never share because he's still like a bit military type, so he doesn't really talk much.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
he never share his emotions besides displeasure. That's the only thing that old man has to say. Um, so yeah, I think on that end of things, it developed into a mentorship. I think because he kind of liked what I did secretly, maybe. Um, but yeah, I think that's how he started mentoring. He said like, okay, maybe not like this, and then he'll actually like say, okay, follow me on this project, just out of nowhere. But never being that kind figure of sorts. So he's always very tough. So he'll just say like, oh, just Tyler, just follow me onto this meeting. Just keep quiet, observe, and we'll talk about it later. I say like, but where's the writing part? He said, you'll come later. Just sit there.
That must have been shocking in the beginning, right? Like, huh?
Yeah, out of
What?
nowhere. So I literally sit in this meeting and observe these people, and they're like, oh, who's this that you have with you? And he'll just say, don't worry about it. He's just an associate. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay. So the whole time I just have no context, and then right after the meeting, he'll say like, okay, so what do you observe? So what he was trying to teach me then was, yeah, essential observational skills,
Mm,
reading micro expressions, stuff like that, little things. But yeah, that's how it blossomed into like a mentorship of sorts. Because after that, I started talking about things about life and about work, what we
yeah.
noticed in the market, and all that. So yeah, but it was the whole time was remote. So yeah, I only met him ever like I think twice in person.
And why do you believe that mentorship is very crucial for young people? Or is it
Um,
like a young people thing, or should everyone have a mentor? What do you think about the idea of mentorship for
uh,
growth, lah?
for mentorship, I think if you can find someone that has kind of achieved a little bit of what you want to achieve, or they display values that you really think that you want to be emulating, for example, definitely beneficial. um I've benefited from a lot of mentors. I'm still on the Prime for Success platform that happens every Friday.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
wait,
like
Boy
again
Han.
paid forward thing. Yeah, with Boyhan, correct. Yeah, so really nice guy. And oh, I mean, yeah, I've definitely benefited, and that's why I want to pay it forward as well, right? Because mentors have opened up a lot of doors, and they help you to cover all
Definitely.
the speed bumps you otherwise wouldn't have been aware of, right? um yeah, so to that end, it's definitely beneficial. But on the other end of things as well, would you if you ask if it was a necessity to have a mentor, I don't think so, because I think majority of us would start bumping into roads first, and then we'll stumble into a mentor, and then somehow things would they'll
Yeah,
help us
yeah,
out and all that. So yeah, I don't think it's necessary, but is it beneficial? Definitely, from my experience.
yeah. I mean, I do believe in some of that. I mean, I do believe in that. I would say, well, not some of that. I think there is a time and there's a place where the right person will just kind of come into your path. The universe kind of brings them to you, and that's when sometimes it's not so easy to just go and like find a mentor sort of thing, like looking for a job sort of thing. You look for a criteria because that not might not be that fit that you think works for you. You don't really know, you see, you're just kind of figuring it out. So yeah, to a certain extent I would agree with you. I read in one of your posts, right? I
Hmm,
correct me if I'm wrong, because the pronunciation might be a bit off because it's in Chinese.
sure.
It's you said you do Ying Zhao Huan Shen Ying Xiao Shen.
Oh, Ying Zhao Chen. Yeah.
Okay, lah, not so bad, right?
Uh,
You understood me at least.
yes, I know which one you're referring to.
Talk to me about what that is for our viewers who are not from the background and understanding that cultural background of it, right? And how did that shape you?
Oh, okay. So, oh, that takes me back. he'll be ashamed that I'm no longer really practicing, that I've gained a lot of weight. Um, but okay, so how I stumbled upon Ying Zhao Chen as well, because like growing up, my father's a martial artist, so he was practicing the Southern Shaolin martial art called Wuzu Chuan.
Ah,
So yeah, I was actually trained in that since I was 5. So that's something not many people would know. Um, and yeah,
interesting fact.
in training for that, I actually competed in the Southern Shaolin Temple. That was in 2011. Yeah, so that was when I was still in secondary school, and yeah, after that, I was still training in the park one day, and there's this old man. This was in Taman Tun again. So the the big park with the fountain, that's the one. I think Bukit Kara Park is called. Yeah. So he was training there every morning. I mean, I usually go in the evening, so that's why I never met him before that. But then I went in the morning one morning. I think it was like 5 a.m. So he was training there. He was observing. Then he said like, "Okay, that sounds. You look like you have some practice. Do you want to learn something different?" So again, by chance, so he had a chat with my father. He said like, "Is it okay if I teach your son? Just come in every morning, and that's basically all you need to do." So yeah, talked to him, and then he started training me, and that was for like 3 years, every morning, every weekend. So he'll say, just come from 6 to 9 a.m. every Saturday and Sunday, and just train and yeah, pick it up as you go. So that's the context for that martial art, and how that helped to shape me. Oh, that made me realize how discipline is such a factor, because my master for that art, he is incredibly disciplined. He'll sleep exactly at 8 p.m. every night and wake up at 4 a.m.
Mm,
to train. And he has a very strict dietary regimen as well. He'll drink certain things at certain hours. He'll eat certain things at certain hours, and it's a routine. He doesn't break the cycle at all.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so from him, I learned quite a bit of discipline, and how that has helped to shape my personality. I think, yeah, that's why I think it's because of his practice really that I got used to my mentor's military style of operating the team. Yeah, because in training the Southern Shaolin martial arts, right? You first of all
Yes.
told not to ask questions. You do not complain. You just do the thing until you can do it. And they don't really
Yeah.
explain it to you. It's not like like Taekwondo or modern classes where they explain the technique and everything. They said no, just stay there. Once you get the right form, you'll understand. You'll understand in due time. There's no belt system. If you take 6 months, good. You take 6 years, that's on you as well.
So it'll be
So
like it will reveal itself to you, sort of thing, and you'll figure it out somehow, but you don't know when.
yeah, so it's just clueless the whole time. So I think it helped me to understand uncertainty as well.
That's interesting, actually, right? Because I mean, especially generally, right? If just the whole fast food generation that we're in, not just young people, but even older people, we want things fast, 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 and we want to know. And I think that would have trained you very well for the pandemic, right? The uncertainty that a lot of people kind of grapple with, like, oh my god, like what's going to happen next. But if you've had that kind of an exposure or perspective, then I'm not saying it's easy, but like you said, you've been somewhat trained that uncertainty to not be so expecting answers all the time. You say
Yeah,
that?
so actually, you raised you. I've actually never thought of this before until you raised it up. So yeah, now that you mentioned, I think that could be why I'm quite comfortable with uncertainty. Because I mean, if you look at my profile, even though I was a recruiter and HR, like no one would touch my CV if it made any sense, right? Because I was not with companies for too long as well.
Mm,
Um, but yes, because I was quite comfortable with uncertainty. So for example, when I moved on from like a big recruitment agency to a smaller one to set up the IT recruitment arm for them, yeah, it was uncertain. They know environment, they know the people. I know I was there to do something, and I'll figure it out. So that kind of came from the whole practice of the Chinese martial arts, because the whole time they just tell you this is what you need to do, this is what you need to feel. If you haven't felt it yet, adjust your posture and everything until you figure it out. So you're always told an outcome that you need to have, and
mm,
you just need to get there. However you get there, you figure it out. Yeah. So if you can figure out faster, better for you. If you figure out slow, that's on you as well. Because instruction was given. Now you just need to do the thing. Yeah. So in hindsight, yeah, I think through the pandemic and everything else, yeah, the main theme of it is just to soldier on, right? Because you're not sure
yeah,
what's gonna
yeah.
happen. Nobody
You don't know
knows.
what's going to happen. This you
Yeah.
can't see the finish line, right? You can't see
Yes.
where you're going. Even it's like you're blinded to a certain extent, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually very beautiful. That whole idea of it and coming to terms with not knowing what's going to happen, and I think that's a good way to face challenges, actually, right? Because if you if you're always in that stagnant kind of, I mean, life is not stagnant, lah, firstly, right? No matter what, pandemic or not, it's not it's always changing. So if you expect things to be exactly the way it always is, it's very hard for you to grow. And I
Mm.
guess that's why head of growth really makes a lot of sense for you, I think. Laura, you are very intuitive, I have to say. I don't know whether it's the other way around. How did it work? But
No.
is that the same kind of vibe you took in when you went into recruitment? The transform cultures, right? And
Uh,
I think you've written a lot about how recruitment should be and how employers should be more open. And we spoke about this as well on a call, right, a couple of months back.
yeah.
And again, you're coming in from, like, you're very young, then you're coming in now and telling corporate companies that are like, if you get what I mean, very straight jacket, right? This is the way we've always done it. This is the way, the only way. You get what I mean? And then you're telling them, but why not you look at it at this? I mean, how was it, right? Speaking to this kind of corporate companies and trying to transform the way they look at things. What was
Ah,
it like?
okay. So how transform cultures came about as an idea? It was really because I was again, it was really out of curiosity, if anything, because for the longest time when I was working in recruitment, I tried to analyze the
Mhm.
structure of how things are done, how effective the things we are doing actually are. For example, like retention rates, one good measure. Another good measure is, the ability to perform the moment they join, closer to onboarding, even better. So yeah, I had some notes scribbled about it, and I always try to adjust the structure of the system that currently is in place, right, for recruitment, for example.
Mm.
So I had a lot of notes of that accumulated over like the past 2 years I was working in recruitment. Because one thing I always try to do is make sure I'm not just doing the work, I'm analyzing how I'm doing the work as well, right? So blue hat thinking. And yeah, it reached to a point where I had enough notes to be able to see that number one, like for example, the way you write a JD, um, past a few lines each, it really doesn't make sense because people just don't read it anyway. So you don't need to write a long job description. You handle that during the interview instead, right?
Oh, some
So
of them still have that, Tyler.
yeah, exactly. Like you could write everything, sure. Some people would read it. Do they even understand what it means? No, because it's
Three
written in
pages
corporate
of it.
speak. Yeah, and it's written in corporate speak, so no one really understands what it is. There's no
Yeah.
like, oh, you're supposed to
Yeah.
do this task. Like, yeah, but what's the scale? Who's it for? You have no idea. So there's no
Yeah.
point in writing it in that much detail because no
Mm-hmm.
one reads it. So I had all these, thoughts and theories that I had, which I mean, to me, in your head, if it makes sense, it's not enough because you need to know it works outside, right?
Whether people
And
can compute with what you're writing, right? Is it
yeah,
communicative or not at the end of the day, right?
correct, correct. So that's why when I was consulting with Transform Cultures, about other people's hiring processes, how they brand themselves as employees, for example, um, I wasn't happy with just being able to do it for free for other people. Like to me, the best evidence that what you have is valuable is if people are willing to pay you for
Pay
what
for
it's
it.
worth,
Yeah,
right? So that's
definitely.
paramount that it's actually going to solve a problem. People have full confidence in it and they let you run
Mm.
it, right? Yeah, so that grew like within 1 year. Like I had 9 clients at the end of it, and yeah, it was pretty interesting because it goes to show without shadow of a doubt that this actually works. It really is done, and that's when I started thinking like, okay, so what's next? Because I was satisfied knowing that what I have is actually of value and it actually works. So yeah, I mean, how was it like in terms of dealing with the people who would doubt me because of age? I mean, okay, it
Especially in the
helps that
beginning, in the beginning when you came up with this idea and you went like, hey,
yeah, they always ask, where's the research for this? Who has done this and what's the success rate? When you're doing something new, there's no grounds or basis to base it off because there's been no results to test. So
yeah.
what I had to do was I had to go to two companies to do pilot tests with them. So I said I
Mm,
just set up for you for free, use it. All I ask is that you allow me to use the data that's collected back, in terms of the numbers, not the personal data, just
yeah,
the
yeah.
numbers to show that this actually works, right? And if you ask for a reference, can I ask them to give you a call? Right? So they said yes, can. So okay, I ran two. The test came out well, and I used that to kind of pitch my point. So had to at least get some evidence because otherwise people, they won't be confident enough.
Correct. Yeah, correct, correct.
Because my hair isn't white yet, so there's some doubt there.
I can so relate. If you walk into education 20 years ago, right? Everyone has a white head of hair, and they got like kids at 10 years old, 15 years old, and here comes this small kichi monyet trying to come in. I get you when you say that, the white hair, you gotta, it's like you gotta age really fast when you don't have that white hair. So what do you need to compensate, right? Totally, totally. And talking about this recruitment thing, right? There's something like I've heard you say even when we had conversations, right? You say that people always say we need to choose the right candidate, and you say not a good fit profile.
Right.
Can you
Okay.
tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. So for the longest time, I think how majority of people choose a candidate for their team, right? So excluding, let's say, HR, just hiring managers themselves to hire for their departments,
Mm,
because ultimately they make the decisions, right? So
correct.
how they normally base it off is number one, their own self-image, right? If they're a bit like me, good choice. But a whole team of
Yeah.
people like you is also no good, right?
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is how well do you know what a good fit is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Rather than basing it off a preset expectation of how this person should be doing interviews and therefore trying to hire based on that. Instead, maybe look at the current challenges within the organization and versus the growth path for the company. Where does it need to be in, like,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be too long. 2 years is enough. I think with COVID, it's shown us that next week it could be a different story, right? So
Yeah.
don't have plan too
Definitely.
far. 2 years, I think, is sufficient. Um, yeah, just imagine how the company needs to grow and what kind of energy or feel or skill would the company need based on that, right? But the main thing is always keep an open mind when you're actually interviewing somebody, because again, whatever we write on paper, whatever you can see in the public image, totally different from maybe what they do on the side, right? So
Mm,
there's no
correct.
way to tell what that person actually encapsulates as a whole, as a package, right? So I try not to think of them from their professional shell, which is what a CV and what interviews normally evaluate, but really deep dive into what they can represent as a person and the kind of value they bring to the team.
Mm,
Because if they start making friends with the people inside the company, colleagues become friends, their personal energy also plays a big part. So you can't evaluate a
definitely.
person based on just their professional experience. That to me usually doesn't turn out well.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you're only seeing half of the story, not even half lah, maybe quarter of the story. You don't really see the big picture, right? And I think you talk about that as well, right? We always like to see the small fragments of it, but not exactly the big picture. Very, very interesting. And when you talk about, I mean, where you are now, right? Because we only have like less than 20 minutes left, and I want
Mm.
to cover a few things.
Sure.
When you talk about your role now as the head of growth, right? And there's something that I noticed in your profile that I think really aligns with who you are. And when we had the conversations and what you said about, you like to see human behavior and patterns, and even when you're talking about the not the right fit, right? You're analyzing further, right? A person is not just the person as in the person's name and their professional kind of background. You said you want people to realize part of themselves that they haven't realized, they haven't seen. Can you talk to me about that and how that fits in within your role today, in in this new company? Not really new
Uh,
company, but yeah, in your new role
right.
here.
So I think for me, right, the one of the saddest things I've noticed growing up as well, and working with different sorts of people, because a part of the fun of ghostwriting is you get to be very intimate with people who have been through so much experience.
Yeah,
You talked about the most intimate parts of their life that maybe sometimes they don't even tell their husbands or wives, right? Because they take it to their grave. You have an NDA, they'll tell you everything, and sometimes more than they tell their therapist, which to me wasn't healthy. But
yeah.
well, yeah, people need an outlet for that sort of stuff. So one of the saddest things I've always had to listen to when I was writing for them is always the parts about their regrets, right? So a question I used to ask them, for example, was, through everything that you've accomplished, what still made you feel like you had some change on the table? What do you actually regret not having done that you feel that you have potential to do, but you're too scared to do it, right? And now you're too late past your life and you don't think you can do it anymore. And yeah, that seems to be the thought that a lot of people can't sit with, because like how things could have been, you don't know, it could be better, and that leaves a lot to think about. So I think that's when I started really thinking about, yeah, how can I first of all, for myself even, right? How do I avoid
Yeah.
being in such a situation, which you can't avoid it 100%, but you can minimize it, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
Yeah, and therefore, what I was doing as a career coach with other people as well was, looking again, because people tend to evaluate themselves based on different metrics, right? For example, what's my current salary? How many years of experience do I have? What's my degree? Do I need education? Do I need more certifications, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Granted, in some industries, that's a must, right? For example, if you're an actuary, you have to go through like 5 papers to be a full-fledged actuary, so that you can't run from, right? It's a standardized industry. But for
Right.
things that are a bit less regulated, like I don't know, marketing, for example, very fluid
Mm.
sort of company, like certificates and all that don't mean too much.
Yeah,
So the
definitely.
base of your potential and value of evidence of number of years, number of things you've done, accomplishments, and everything else, not entirely accurate because I think the main thing that people tend to shy away from is pursuing an interest that they actually want to develop, right? So there's a fine line between a hobby and interest, in the sense
Yeah.
that hobby is probably an interest that can never be monetized,
Mm.
right? If you think about it. So if I write the things I write for fun for myself, probably would never do well anywhere else. And any big creator like Harry Potter and all that, for example, they also have to think for the audience as well. So it's not entirely
Yes.
what you enjoy. There's also an element of difference, right? So that's why I'll say it's an interest, not a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even to pursue interest can be quite daunting sometimes because people feel like, oh, maybe it is maybe what if I started doing it too much and now I don't like it, right? Because now it's work.
Then I won't
Um,
like it anymore, right? People say that a lot, right?
exactly. And sometimes it's true. So that's what makes it even scarier, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
What if I hate this thing that I love so much? It's like I've ruined it for myself, right?
yeah, it's like listening to that song that you really liked on the radio once, and then now you hear it too much, and you're like, now you're sick of it, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it could turn out like that. So I think in
Mhm.
my role for as a head of growth currently, yes, to not only help people do better or to to grow as people, but also learn to trust themselves a bit more. Because I think with confidence, you start developing way quicker, right? You have confidence in your ability, you have confidence in your judgment, for example. I think that's where a lot of people tend to fall short for themselves. You actually know the answer, you know that this is right, but that self doubt, it's just like, oh, yes, hold back, and then now we'll never find out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think just
And I
pushing people
think
across the line little
it's
bit by little
also
bit.
what you said, right, about what we define as success might not be truly our definition of success, but people have said this is success and this, and this is how it should be. But then you have this nagging feeling that I should be doing this, but nah, maybe it's dangerous to do that. It's not the right way, right? It's not, again, something that you said, the perfect plan, right?
Yeah, they try to be, perfect plan, perfect knowledge. Never happens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a barrier for young people. We tend to think that, oh, because we're the youngest, therefore we probably should keep quiet, in the room. But I think
Yes.
you're willing to be accountable, you're willing to take that risk and say, yeah, if this doesn't work out, my head is on chopping block, it's fine. If you're willing to take that risk, yeah, you'd be quite surprised where you might end up. If you
Agreed,
really
agreed.
believe in what you want to pursue and you believe that
Yeah.
you're right, at least try.
At least try. Yeah, I think that's a good spirit to have, right? I always tell my students, like, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I always look at it that way, right? What's the worst that can happen? Okay lah, you fail, then try again. If you take the job and it doesn't work out, there's always another job, right? It's not like you're nailed to the coffin. That's your job forever. And then, if you take the job and it doesn't happen, or even the interest thing that you talked about, right?
Hmm.
It's you can you can be fluid about things because life is such, right? Okay, so we're just going to end with, there's a few words I want you to just complete the sentence, right? Just to kind of
Okay.
get an idea of the way you look at certain things, right? Okay, so we'll start with the first one. Honesty is,
The best policy.
okay. Reflection for me.
Um, oh, reflection for me. Is that something you finish? Okay, reflection for me is the best tool to think.
Being young.
Being young as a state of mind is never, a physical attribute.
I love that. I love that. Have you guys heard that? Have you guys heard that? And what he said, right? The beauty of it is it doesn't just apply to young people, it applies to any age. Right? Any age, love that. The perfect blend.
Does not exist. Stop.
Flexibility is
Flexibility is, oh, there's two things. So flexibility is afforded when there's trust, and also flexibility is what keeps a very tight ship sometimes.
okay. And the last one. Don't like to
What's with
say
that
this word
laugh?
on air. I want to say it anyway. All this I'm quoting from you, Tyler. If you
Oh,
notice,
okay.
a lot of these keywords I've picked from you. I also like to see how people's brain works and pick them. And I think I got a lot more. I think we have to have a lot more conversations, and I think I can pick a lot from you as well. Ashwina says the perfect plan does not exist. Well said. Ha 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 ha.
Absolutely.
I think you do you know Maverick? Maverick
Maverick
Fu?
who? I've
Maverick
heard.
Fu.
Yes, 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 yes.
I think
I
you and him have you guys met?
I don't think I've ever met him, no. But I've heard his name, yes.
You guys have to go and have coffee, seriously. You will just
Okay, I'll
love
I'll
the
reach out.
conversations because your brain and his brain, right? Seriously, you will love each other. The kind of conversations y'all will have. Uh, just go and, go and talk to Maverick. So the last
Okay,
one, the
sure.
last one.
Sure.
Sucking at something new.
Is to be expected.
Thank you very much.
Right.
So I think we've got the best of Tyler Chin today, and I'm hoping that maybe we can bring you back in the future, and maybe we'll focus on a particular area, because I think there's a lot more nuggets we can get from you, and I'm really very happy that you agreed to. We spoke about this a couple, I think maybe 4, 5, 6 months ago. I think
Yes, quite long. It's been quite long, yes.
quite well. You didn't reply me. I was like, oh my god, has he forgotten?
I'm quite bad at texting. I think everyone can attest to that.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to start, when it comes to branding and all this on LinkedIn, I'm going to start stalking his posts and, putting my face there. So he goes like, oh yeah, Cheryl.
Well, it works. It
So
works.
it worked, right? It worked. So thank you so much, Tyler. It was really lovely to have you. Guys, reach out to Tyler. You can actually find him on LinkedIn. Are you on any other platform, Tyler?
Not active on any other platforms actually. So yeah, mainly
So yeah,
LinkedIn, mainly LinkedIn.
yeah, check out Tyler on LinkedIn. You can follow him. He has amazing writing that will really make you think. I think interesting things that you guys should really think about is, I think the journaling is a very good habit to start off, and it really helps with being reflective about whatever that you do. And I hope you all have found this session inspirational. I have definitely, and I hope we finally go and have a coffee soon. Now that the pandemic is not as scary, I guess, in a way. It's still scary,
Yes,
but not
we
as
should. We
scary as it
should.
was before. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone who tuned in. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you guys have a good night. So goodbye. I'll see you in the backstage. Good night,
Sure.
everyone. Bye. Bye. Bye.